Hello, booktube. I'm Scott.
I'm Nelle.
We are Gunpowder, Fiction and Plot. So today we have an idea for a video. We're going to discuss literary fiction and where you should start if you're just trying to get into it. So the other day we posted a where to begin with literary fiction video, and we, in the filming process, listed 16 books. But when we edited, I kind of thought that the length worked with 8 books. That still means that we've got 8 books that we recommended. So this is part 2. Yeah. So we wanted to have a little category we've called genre benders, where you could call them literary fiction or you could call them something else.
And I think these ones are really good if you're coming from genre fiction and you're used to, I guess, an imaginative premise than just sort of maybe the tale of someone's life, I guess.
Yeah, so if you're a fan of dystopian fiction, a book that you could definitely pick up is Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale.
I think that this is a really good one, again, because it's got the Hulu series. That companion can really make it that bit more accessible.
Yeah.
Although the series has far outstretched the plot that's been written by Margaret Atwood at this point.
Yeah, I think the TV series and the book is season 1 of...
Yeah. But the book, The Handmaid's Tale, is an incredible dystopian work of art, but not Margaret Atwood's only. I would also suggest Oryx and Crake if you like dystopian and wanted to get into sort of more literary dystopia.
Yeah. With Margaret Atwood, nothing she writes in any of her books is made up. It is all something that exists in the real world or has happened in the real world, and she's just grabbed all these pieces and fragments of
Humans
societies
being horrible
and
to humans,
put them-
mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if something horrifies you in one of her novels, then you could get to Google it and find out when in history it happened and who to.
Yeah. The next one, if you're into sci-fi, you might like to read Octavia Butler's Kindred.
Or you should just read it anyway, because it's fucking awesome.
Dana is a modern day woman who randomly travels back in time, modern day black woman who randomly travels back in time to a plantation, and it's demonstrating the differences in values and how those systems work, and it's just an incredibly well crafted novel. The characters in this novel and their purposes, everything means something.
The assumption that Dana's a slave when she travels back in time is immediate, and the idea that you could be so endangered by your appearance is very prevalent and palpable, and this book is a little bit scary because the protagonist is pretty much always in danger. This was the first Octavia Butler book that I had ever read, and I was so impressed by it. It is just such a good blending of a story as entertainment and all of the other literary things that you can hope for in a book. I think it's an excellent place to start if you're trying to get into literary fiction.
It's such a clever device to get us to empathise with a character on a plantation as well. It's so...
The idea of being dumped into that environment, like we can all sort of empathise with Dana's journey, even if we're not necessarily coming from a perspective where we experience racism regularly.
Exactly. Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. So this is another one that has a TV series out.
Yeah. This is the story of a child who is surrendered, and then the mother wants the baby back. And the court case that ensues over the custody of this child. But it's not viewed through the eyes of the mother of the baby or the woman who has adopted the baby in the meantime. It is viewed through the idea, the neighbourhood around them and the friends of each side, while they all go through their own, I guess, relationships with each other.
one of the things I really liked about Celestine's writing is that she didn't pick sides, and this is something that really good literary fiction writers do. They don't pick sides and they don't judge their characters. They let their characters be flawed in the way they're flawed.
And they do what they do.
Yeah, and this is just a perfect example of this happening. It's so simple and easy to read, and you can just follow and enjoy the characters and root for who you root for.
It's a good bitchy drama, and you can definitely get behind it in the way that you would a good soap opera. But there's so much more going on when it comes to race and class and privilege and just like white savior complex and all the things. So it's a good one to lift the lid on.
Yeah, another very simple, very complex.
Yeah.
The next one is a really short one. Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper, which again is in this genre bending category because it's basically a thriller, a psychological thriller.
But it's very literary and there's so much imagist illusions going on in this one.
This woman goes on a holiday with her partner and she's locked in this room and all she can focus on is the yellow wallpaper, and you sort of look at why she is in this room and what's going on, and you're seeing everything through her eyes, and she's clearly unreliable as well, and you're trying to determine what's real and what's not real, and
so is she,
and whether she is in danger or not does not matter because you are right there with her.
Yeah, but this is I think it's like 15 pages long, but it is so it's really scary. Don't read it at night.
The discussion it has around women's rights and around mental health.
Yes, and around the mental health industry and how that has actually been used to imprison women in the past. It's a great companion, I think, to 10 Days in a Madhouse by Nelle Bly. But this one is fiction and that one is not.
This leads us into our next category, because this is such a short story that actually you can get into relatively short stories and
dig and dig and dig until you find all the juicy little potatoes under the surface.
So this is one that you've read earlier.
Yeah, so I really liked The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. This is a collection of stories about various church ladies, and I guess each one has its own literary merit, and you can have a little break it up into segments and think about each one and tackle them one by one, and then have a think about them as a whole, as a collection, because really the huge amount of beauty in this was that as a collection they really tackle the idea that a church lady is any one thing, because every lady in every story is someone different, very, very different from the last.
Hey Nelle, shut up, you're pretty.
I am. But...
Shut Up You're Pretty is a collection of short stories told about a woman, or rather women.
They're all about the transactional nature of sex, or sexuality, I guess. Every story has a turning point that surrounds a sexual act or the withholding of a sexual act, I guess. And each story makes a statement, but again, viewed as a collection, once you've read them all, they're all that more powerful.
And lots of questions about race and sexuality and
power.
And not just sexuality in that, who do you find attractive, but how much sex you want and that sort of stuff as well.
And what counts as sex, and all of the things.
Yeah, everything. Girl, Woman, Other is not a collection of short stories, but you could almost view it as a collection of linked short stories, even though it is a novel.
I feel like Homegoing, the next one on the list, breaks up in a really similar way. I think they're both sort of episodic.
Yeah, well, both these books. So, Girl, Woman, Other is like a story of this party and the women at this party and their experience of race in Britain and how that all interconnects and intersects with each other. Homegoing is a story of these two sisters growing up in Africa. One marries a slave trader, one becomes a slave, and it follows their children generation to generation. One family staying in Africa, one family moving to the States. And both these books like paint that picture of what it means to be black through characters that are not that strongly connected, but are connected.
It's interesting because it's like a lot of quickly drawn portraits, and I think that examining them in sections could make it more accessible. But also the line drawing you through from one to the other makes it interesting as a whole.
Yeah, and I think like Girl with Another is a perfect example of what you said at the very start. You don't have to get everything in this book for it to be good. This book won the Booker Prize, but it's so simple on the surface that it's so easy to get that
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a hard book. Do you know what I mean? Well, that's 16 books that are great starting places for
Literary fiction. If you're a literary fiction reader, what was the first literary fiction book you read? And if you're not, where do you plan to start?
Yeah. If you're new here, whack that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and have a nice day.
Bye.